You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling.
Hey guys, we're back today with an Off the Mountain podcast. And I'm here with Pastor Tom Touchstone and Pastor Josh Vietti, my son, and myself. Vince is under the weather today.
Allegedly.
Well, today I want to tell you, we're going to get kind of, what's the word I want to use?
We're going to get edgy.
We're going to get edgy. That's a good word. Edgy. And we're going to talk about answering culture's tough questions.
Because they are hard.
They're hard. Now, culture is changing rapidly today, and there's developing a big divide between what I would call the traditional conservative values and the progressive liberal values. And the church stands somewhere in the middle of that. And it is my opinion that the church needs to be a little more vocal on these issues. In fact, our Bible that we read says we're the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its flavor, it's no good for anything but to be tossed out. And salt burns wounds, and salt heals wounds. It does many things. Now, stay with us today. Some of you are going to hear things that you have not been aware of, and I hope it doesn't shock you, but it might, about some of the things we're going to discuss. But let's just dive right in. And the first thing I want to start off with today is California's Assembly bill that's been introduced. I don't think it's been passed yet, AB 665. And if it's passed, it will allow your kids as young as 12 years of age to be placed in a group home without parental consent if a mental health counselor feels it's necessary, and they could actually take your child away. But let me preface this. Up until now, there's been a bill similar, and I do know that there are some circumstances that might be necessary. If a child's been abused or molested, then that might be necessary. So I understand the reason for the law. But what I'm being told, and I've read the law, or the bill, is that with this particular bill, there might be a way too much latitude given to these counselors. And it might affect a lot of other areas. And I hope it doesn't go to those areas where if our child's in school wanting to do something that's against our biblical values and we're not standing with them, that a counselor could put them into a home. We don't know where it's going to go. But a lot of this stuff is happening. It seems like, Tom, on almost a regular basis, all these different bills being introduced that the common person doesn't know anything about it.
Well, Pastor, what it sounds like is they want to keep redefining things,
yes,
like words.
Yes.
And that's, I think, a slippery slope. And once you define words, I think it then gives latitude to bring in other areas that we would strongly disagree with. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like we believe that if a child's being hurt or abused, then that is true. Somebody should step in.
Somebody should step in.
But when you start to redefine the definition of what those words mean,
well, didn't somebody say there's about 68 terms now that apply to gender issues or whatever? There's a bunch anyway. I was watching Dr. Phil the other day, and I thought he said 68, but man, he said, and I agree, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning sometimes. To remember all these terms and to say them right is going to be very difficult. And so anyway, let's talk a while. I want to start out this morning talking about the transgender issue today.
Well, and I think if we do, Pastor, we got to go back and talk about, you and I were raised in an era.
Yes.
What I'm going to say is, we believed in two sexes.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
and if you were confused, you just had to check
and see.
And there should be no more confusion at that point.
Yes.
I mean, it just was. But in the 70s, the feminist scholars came out and they wanted to bring in a gender way of distinguishing social constructed aspect of male and female differences. They said, okay, let's have something besides sex. And now that's always bothered me.
Yes.
Because I think it goes back to, and I think that's where our belief goes into the play, where we believe God created male and female.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to say at the outset today that I believe with all my whole heart that everyone has a right to live out their lives however they want.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. That's God's given right. And now we will, according to our opinion and according to our value system, which is the Bible, we will stand before God and give an account about how we lived our life on earth. But you know what? I want to say to our audience today that I will love anyone who comes in our church doors. I don't care how different they are than me. They deserve, every human being deserves respect. They deserve the right to live their life the way they want to live their life. And we should treat everyone the same. See, I don't see people as gay, straight, transgender, non-transgender. I don't see people as a Democrat, a Republican. I just see them as people that are all doing the same thing we're doing, trying to work our way through this journey
I
and
agree.
get to where God, and we're all confused at some points about a lot of issues. I'm not saying today we have all the answers.
It was funny. Josh said it yesterday at Second Surface because Josh and I were out on the California State University of Bakersfield last Thursday night, and we were there with a group, and a young man approached me at the end, and he doesn't believe like we do. I mean, he didn't, but he asked how would he get mentored by the group that we were representing, and I looked at him and I go. It was one of those moments, Pastor, I felt the Holy Spirit pull me, and I go, I'll mentor you. And he goes, okay. He goes, well, how would that work? I go, I'll join you on your campus once a week if you'll join me on my campus once a week. And so, he said, okay, well, how would that work? I go, well, on Sunday we have 2 services. And I pointed at Josh. I go, Josh is going to be speaking. So Josh came over, and what did he say, Josh? Are sinners welcome?
Yeah, he asked if sinners were welcome, and I said, well, I'm probably the biggest one, and I'm speaking on Sunday. So.
Yeah.
And he showed up yesterday, and it was
Great,
so cool.
great.
And but he didn't give his life to the Lord. I mean, it wasn't this thing, but
He said he did say, I can't believe how welcoming you guys are.
Yes.
Is what he said.
That's
and
a
that
compliment.
was a big compliment.
Yeah,
That is
for sure.
huge.
so
Because I agree with you. Like, I think we should be. I believe every church should be the most welcoming place in town.
yes,
And I know that's not the case. And so, talking about tough subjects like transgender and these types of subjects, there's already a connotation that people are going to apply to it, right? And already a judgment. And so if somebody's on the left side of this argument, they're going to automatically say, these are 3 white dudes and they hate us, right?
2 old white dudes and a young dude,
right,
or a
yeah.
middle-aged guy.
Yeah, exactly. And so were you going to finish saying something, Tom? I'm sorry.
Well, no, I just said it was a cool experience because we went out to a place that his name's Ernest Jackson III, that Ernest goes to. I mean, that's when kids are in college, that's their world, that's their life. And we were out there, and he was interested, and he said, hey, I'd like to learn more. And he was willing to, and we're saying, hey, we'd like you to learn more. But there was no judgmentalness there as far as what we did, and he showed up. So it's almost like, well, the ball's in your court. So I will see him for coffee this week.
Good for you.
And we'll start this relationship
Yes.
back and forth. But he's not convinced of the way I believe. And I've lived a life of where he's at. So I'm just hoping because I asked him, I go, why would you want the old white dude? and he just says, well, I mean, would you do it? And I go, I would. But the whole thing is like we were meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's sometimes the church's big problem. They open their doors and say, come see us if you want to. Well, it's okay to do that.
Love is a bridge.
Yes.
Love is the bridge.
And I think when you start building these things, it gives you an opportunity to speak in their life.
Right.
Well, I said in my book, Tribal Influence, everyone has their rights, and we want to give them those rights. But when your rights start interfering with my rights, then we have a problem.
Yep.
That can't happen.
I agree with that.
I'm not here to judge people, but I'm here to love them. God is the only judge, not me. But in the same token, I must stand on my biblical values. And I believe that God was very instrumental in our birth, male or female, he made us. And I have to stand on those. And in the church world, while we're talking about that, there's 2 sides of the pendulum. One side of the church over here beats people up with judgmentalism, and it's horrible. And the other side is they're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about anything that's controversial at all. And I think because of that, people are turning away from the church. It's like an umpire that can't call a ball or a strike. Well, I don't know. We need, as a church, to create a safe environment for any people who are struggling with anything to come in.
And have a safe conversation.
Have a safe conversation.
Pastor, something I think you've always talked about from the pulpit is have a truth and believe in it and be able to stand by it and prove it. Yeah. I love to talk to people. I love to talk to people about faith. And I don't care what faith you are. My faith is Christianity, and I believe Jesus Christ is the Savior, and He's the one who's straightened me out. And if you want to talk about that, I'll talk about that all day long. But I will give you a chance to tell me how your faith helps you every day of your life.
Yeah, I think we might be talking to people out there today that are confused about a lot of different areas of life. And it is my opinion, and it's based on my experience. Give your life totally to God, and He will slowly but surely on the journey start fixing you wherever you're broken at.
I've got a Jewish friend that explained to me on how he believes his Jewish faith helps him. He goes, we have rituals, we have things that we do every day, up to 360 things, that as we do them, we believe that we're interacting with God, and interacting with God each and every day brings us into His presence, and we'll make godly decisions. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not my thoughts, but I'm like, at least he can explain it to me where I can understand it.
Well, I have lived in a different mindset for the past, 20 years. I've been in adult world, I've lived an adult life. I haven't worried about what people think, or if people have different beliefs or different views than I do. That's fine. That's their business, and it doesn't affect me. And I believe that in America, everyone should have, as long as they're not harming somebody else, they should have the right to be who they want to be. If someone says that they are transgender and they want to live that life as an adult, I have no issue.
I'm with you.
I'm not going to fight you.
I'm with you.
On that, I'm not going to fight you as long as it's not harming somebody else. I'm not going to make a stink of it, right? But when you have kids, it's different when you have adults who are trying to influence the kids. You sent us a Dr. Phil episode where he was talking about, how to deal with, this issue of transgenderism in schools.
And it was just 2 days ago.
It was a couple days ago, yeah. And so I watched it. And I heard these young people who identify with the LGBTQ plus, world, which is, different for a lot of people. But I heard them talk about how they were bullied in school, or their parents didn't agree with them on something. That was definitely my childhood. I was bullied in school, and my parents didn't agree with me on everything. It's funny because, just yesterday, my wife and I were in a store, and my girls were going nuts in the store. They were going from one place to another, grabbing different types of sugary items, candy, donuts. They wanted ice cream, and every time they'd bring it to us, we'd say no, and they would lose their little minds. Why me? And that's the mind of a child. They want a certain thing, even though it's not good for them, and so. When I hear somebody talking about being bullied or their parents don't agree with them, I think, well, isn't that childhood, right? Like I was bullied as a kid. I really was.
I think everybody experiences that.
I was legitimately bullied, and it's hard. It's not fun, it's not easy. But unfortunately, we have, parents that are afraid to even raise their kids and teach them values and teach them their own value as a kid and their own value as a human being. And because of that, kids are growing up with this frustration or even anger or resentment toward authority in general. And they're fighting against actual authorities. And they're trying to push these ideals that, they were treated in a way that they did not like as a child. And so they're trying to, push back on adults, like parents that are trying to teach their kids a certain way. And when you teach your kids a certain way, you're going to disagree with them. Yeah. You're going to discipline them. You're going to say no a lot. And that's the way it is.
But here's where it's even going to get worse. With culture changing so quickly, And some of the schools, not all, but some of them that are pushing an agenda that is anti-Christian values, we're going to have a lot more of this in the house.
And I think some are. I don't think it's every teacher.
No, I said some, not all.
There are a lot of public school teachers that are awesome.
There are
I talked
principals that are awesome.
I talked to a friend recently who is a good. He's a good dude in the community. He works in construction field, and his wife is a high school teacher. And he said that one of the biggest concerns she has as a high school teacher is these kids are coming into the classroom in high school and their reading level is like 4th, 5th grade.
Yes.
It's really, really bad. And so their education, the education level's low. And so what we have right now is we have a whole generation of parents that aren't teaching their kids at home. We have a whole generation of unfortunately, schools that are less than par where they should be, right? And we have all kinds of issues that we need to be focusing on. I don't think that the answer is to let kids choose to do and be whatever they want to do and be. I don't think that's it.
Well, they're not ready to make those decisions. Now, we went to a spring concert at our 2 granddaughters, Romy and Olive, your daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and I was so impressed at kindergarten. They got up and quoted every book of the Bible and quoted the 10 Commandments by heart. And I was just so impressed. And so parents right now are going to be really, really challenged to start looking at the plan they have for their kids to make sure they're trained right while they're young.
Well, Pastor, and this is something that, you've taught us, and all I can do is say it. So parenting belongs in the home.
Yes, it does.
Parenting belongs in
Not
the
in the
home.
school.
Not in the school. The school supplements you in areas that you lack expertise. But parenting, my girls they learned at the home how to treat other people. They learned in the home our values. We talked about there again. I'm going to do some podcasting pumps. If you want to hear some podcasts from Off the Mountain, you can go out and hear them about values. We did one on hearing God's voice. We did one on circumstances, when they're beyond your control. So go out there and re-listen to those. But if a parent wants to think they're going to hand off their role to somebody else and it's going to be done the way they want it to be done, they're sorely mistaken, isn't it?
Get real.
Yeah.
Get real.
I mean, it's you can't relegate to somebody else your responsibility.
I'm going to give you a problem, and I want you to help me figure it out. And correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I've been trying to get people to see this for years. Some, not all, many, some, I'll use whichever word, people in the LGBTQ plus community. A lot of them are really, really on a crusade to get us to understand them and agree with them. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
They want us to agree with them and say, hey, we have these rights. You got to recognize these rights. You got to recognize us for who we are. And part of us are saying, yeah, okay, good. But on the other hand, it has to be a two-way street. You have to understand where we're at as Bible teaching Christian people.
Yeah.
You've got to understand us and give us the same rights and same respect to disagree with you on some points, because some of them do not, they don't coincide. In other words, give us the same respect that you're wanting us to give you.
Well, Pastor, what they want us to do, I do believe, because I'm just not saying this because it's my opinion, but I can look out there and hear them say, but you've got to call us something different than you believe you should call us. I can't, there again, if it's a male, I'm going to call you a male. And if it's a female, I'm going to call you a female. And don't regulate on me that I can't say that. They want to regulate that I got to call something else. If I can't, I could see the look I'd get from your face if I came in tomorrow with the cowboy hat on and cowboy boots. You would look at me and go, Tom, I've never seen you wear that before. I can't call you a cowboy, right? Yeah. I know it's a simplistic.
Well, it seems like the divide in our country is getting deeper and deeper. The chasm between two,
extremes,
are widening, and it's unfortunate because somebody like me, I want to live a life where everyone in my life knows that I accept them and love them, and I root for them. I want them to do well in life. And sure, if somebody's a jerk, I want them to change, right? If they're not nice, I want them to change. If they're rude or if they steal or if they kill, I would definitely like them to change. But in the end, I think that love really does win. I really do believe that. And so in this world that we live in right now, what stinks for somebody like me, and I'm trying to teach my kids the same way, is that I'm being forced to choose a side. I'm being forced. And that's what happens. If I'm being pushed by one side, well, then I'm going to go to the other side. I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's not going to, it's not that I'm not waking up in the morning thinking I'm going to go fight the LGBTQ movement today.
No, not at all.
I have no drive to do that.
And Josh, can I say this? You have no problem how they're living their life until it regulates onto your children.
When they start telling me that I hate them, I'm like, wait, what?
But Josh, in the movement, you saw it on Dr. Phil.
Happening?
When we disagree with some of these people and these other movements, they automatically say we hate them.
You're not.
We don't.
But let
We
me
don't
just,
hate them.
let
We
me-
just disagree on the
Let me ask you this:
ideology.
Do you really? Are you going against their movement, or is it the specifics that they're doing where they're infringing?
There you
Like
go.
for example, you brought up this book. Okay, can we talk about this book?
What's the name of the book?
There's a book called Genderqueer that I just found out about literally yesterday.
And you went to the library and saw it.
Well, yeah, you told me about it yesterday. You said this book is being approved in certain school boards across the country, and it has pornographic images in it. So you sent me some web links, right? That were all on the right side of the narrative, and they were right in, conservative side, right? Is that right? Am I saying
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, you
I
are.
always
Yeah,
get the
you are.
right and left
No,
confused.
you are. Yeah, Josh, your point's point on.
Okay, so it's on that side, the conservative side, and so I'm reading these articles, and I'm seeing. So I think, okay, maybe this is true, maybe this isn't. Maybe one person, took images from another book and put them in this article, and then everyone else,
You
like they
doubted what
do.
I was saying. I was telling you they were
It's not
pornographic
that I
images.
doubted you. I doubt sources. I do.
But
And so
Josh,
what I did was
you did what you're supposed to do.
I went to the bookstore and I
Yes.
found the book on the shelf, and I found it in the graphic novel area, which is in a young adult section of Barnes and Noble. And I opened up the book, and I did see these images. And so there are images that are porn. I mean, they
They're
are
pornography.
You can't say anything but
they're
that.
drawings, but that's what they are. And so I realized that this is a big issue. And what's interesting is I looked up also other articles on this book. I looked up both sides. I always look at both sides.
I agree. I agree with you 100%.
And so I found NBC, New York Times, LA Times, these articles, and they showed images of the book that weren't the bad images.
They
weren't
left the bad ones
pornographic.
out for a purpose.
They left them out because
Yes.
they can't put those images. I mean, one reason I know is because they can't put those images online because it's not up to their standards. So they're saying in one way they're saying, okay, it's not okay for us to put it on our website, but it's perfectly fine for
7-year-old
these kids, you know.
Now, let's
And
say
that's
for-
wrong.
let's say
I mean,
for
that's
audience,
completely wrong.
I went and copied the pictures because I wanted to send them to you and Tom. And my wife said, you get those off your phone right now. They're depictions of oral sex. One
I think
depiction.
that'd be against the law, Pastor. It's
How about this?
Yeah,
How about this? The one depiction comes from Socrates, one of his books or one of his pieces of literature. But it shows, and you saw it, it's an older man, looks like he's masturbating a young kid.
I didn't see that image.
It looks
but
like, at least he has a hold of his private organ.
I did see the
And
image of.
that's illegal.
Yeah.
That's called molestation. And the book, now it's called Genderqueer. It's in thousands of schools from what I've heard. It is the most banned book in America also. And a lot of parents if they see the images, I mean, they're pornographic images, detailed. It looks like a child giving a child oral sex. It looks like that. And here's the bottom line is that, parents are objecting, obviously. But now this is I think, several schools, I don't know how many even in California, at the high school level. So a 13-year-old can see these pictures, and they say it's just educational. In my mind, I have a right to my opinion. And I think this is where we have to be grown up enough in this world to agree to disagree.
Yes.
To me, the book, I would think it's possibly grooming kids. It's more grooming them than educational, in my mind, with those kind of pictures in
Well,
there.
what is education?
So the other side of the aisle is going to say, well, that's similar to what Hitler did
Yes.
in
Very much.
banning books, and we're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, let's really take a pause here. And I have
They're
not
using
seen,
that argument.
I have not seen the book, but I don't have to. Pastor, you coined a term years ago. You don't have to pull the lid off a sewer to know it stinks. So as you both have described to me what I thought I knew, I'm like going, absolutely not.
Is the Bible allowed in school libraries? Do you know?
You can't. Well, I think.
Good question.
Does it depend on the library, I guess?
Well, I will tell you this. My wife keeps a Bible at her school, but she keeps it in a drawer. She does.
But is it in the library?
I don't
doubt
know.
it. I doubt
well,
it.
hey, I'm going to ask my wife tonight.
That's a question.
But you know,
I don't
Pastor,
know the
I
answer.
will tell you something you can't do. You cannot write a scripture on the board with an address. You cannot write a sentence that is basically quoting something the Bible would say on the board. You know, I mean, there again, my wife is very, very conservative, and she is a superintendent in a public school system. She survives because she goes on one quote: "No child's going to stumble because of me."
Good for them.
Her
Good for her.
number one priority, she says, is I'm always about the child. It's always about the child. I have a good friend that has a quote that he says, "If the truth makes you uncomfortable, don't blame the truth. Blame the lie that made you comfortable."
Wow.
So if you bought into something like that. So Josh, I love to read the other side of the aisle, which would be for me CNN,
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal,
Sure.
New York Times. So the Wall Street Journal on April 9th, 2023, just a few weeks ago, had a biologist explain why sex is binary. I'm like, I'm in on this article. And it says, an organism's sex is defined by the type of germate, sperm or ova, it has the function of reproducing. Males have the function of producing sperm, and the small germate, females ova, a large one. Because there is no third germate type, there are only two sexes. Sex is binary. Now, I love that because that's my profession. I'm computer science. Binary, the term binary comes from that. Binary means it's a 0 or a 1.
Right.
There's no other choice because that's how computing is done. We all use it. I love the term, it says that does not compute. We all know what that is. Does it make sense? Well, so somebody comes in and says there's a third, it's like, it tilts me. We also had a saying in the computer industry, garbage in, garbage out. GIGO. And so you got to go back and say, there isn't a third one. So that's where the whole idea said we got to come up with something else to take that out because it doesn't make sense outside of that realm. And you go back and I got that definition from the Macmillan Dictionary. And so it's a dictionary that comes up with buzzwords, new technology terms. So it says it itself that there is not a non-binary.
Right.
Well, what if let's play this game for a second. Let's use our imagination. What if I wrote a book just the opposite of genderqueer? And I wrote a book because I believe genderqueer is about a person's journey into transgenderism. And I wrote a book about a person's journey out of transgenderism, how they were a transgender and they found a truth that led them out. And what if I had, illustrations about, them reading a book that said it's unhealthy, it's wrong, and I made pictures that corresponded with this. I mean, would my book get any attention at all? Would it even be allowed in a school if I went the opposite way? Or if I really got radical, wrote a book about my journey into finding God and becoming a religious Christian person,
Well,
those books wouldn't float.
I'm less offended. I mean, it's not that I'm not offended by the ideology, but I'm less offended by that than I am the images and the depictions of explicit material. So I don't think that that's appropriate for any school that is high school or below. I don't think that's appropriate.
Would you be comfortable with your daughters being 13 seeing those images?
No, not at all. And I don't want them seeing heterosexual porn or any type of porn at school. I mean, that's just like normalizing something.
Some of
that
these
shouldn't be
books, though,
normalized,
here's another problem. Some of these books, and I've read through several of them, they seem to be encouraging kids to experiment sexually. Now, right there, we already have a problem because we think there should be no sexual experimentation until you get married.
Yes.
We want our kids experimenting with pornography. No, once you get hooked, man, you're in a bad place.
Well, we want our kids to be, what's interesting is I want my kids to be healthy. And I only looked at this book for 2 seconds. It was kind of gross, so I closed it. But I didn't see anything about protection in there either. I didn't see anything about safety in sex situations. I think that's terrible because STDs are on the rise. It's very unsafe to just say, to basically put a green light on these behaviors that are risky for kids, and everyone agrees on this.
Yeah. Well, I read another one of the papers that I like to read, and it says, according to a draft memo leaked to the New York Times, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services proposed to establish a legal definition of whether someone is made male or female based on solely immunity and the genitals. That's what they decided. So the humans, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services got an email leaked to the New York Times, and they published it. Isn't that great that they'll
really,
come out and say that?
Really, you can't change your gender.
You can't.
You either have an XX or an XY chromosome, and you can't change that. You can change some aspects of that, but you can't change the sexual gender. And
Look,
so
again, let me just rephrase it. Let me just re-say this. I am all for freedom for adults, as long as it's not harming somebody. Now, everyone has their choice to do whatever. I'm not going to come against you. I'm not going to fight you because that's your life.
Yes.
You have one life to live. You can spend it however you want to spend it. I believe God actually gave people the right to live their lives how they want, how they want to choose to live their lives.
But here's the deal. It's going to the children.
At the end of the day, why can't we just stick with math, science, reading, actual education? And you know what? If mental health lacks, which I think it does in school, teach the basics of mental health.
But does a child at age 6, 7, and sometimes younger in 8, we're giving them the liberty to choose their sexual gender? These kids don't even know what they're going to wear to school tomorrow. They'll change their mind 3 times on that. And giving puberty drugs,
and if you ask,
blockers, I should say, and drugs to them.
If you ask that age group, my wife always comes home and she has a smile on her face. If you ask that age group, what do they want to be when they grow up? Kids are all what? Professional athlete.
Right.
Yeah, well, all sorts of different things.
Yeah. The girls are like princess.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the depth of their knowledge, and really it's the depth in there. Again, learning has an age appropriate learning.
Right.
Josh, I thought about it because it's not correctly done this way, but we used to have the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. And if you got out, there was one that my kids, both
you're
of my,
going to be quoted saying that arithmetic is spelled with an R now.
well, no, I said that. And my wife would agree with him because I wasn't a smart one in school. Right. If I was given a choice to learn or do something else, it was always doing something else.
Yeah,
that was because I wasn't a smart kid.
Yeah,
but all my kids, my daughters and my son-in-law, will look at me and they go, "Why don't they teach us how to balance a checkbook in high school?"
Right.
That's a very. But
how about make a job resume? Making up job resumes.
Yeah.
And they learned. My kids learned, but I'm just saying that they were like, that was valuable.
Yeah, and then Dr. Phil had said too, the suicide rate is so much higher in the transgender community. I think he said it was 3 times or several times higher, and
it's sad.
And so
really
for
sad.
that very point
terrible.
alone, you wouldn't want your child probably going that direction. Again, we keep harping on it. When you're adult, you do what you want to do. Yeah. Don't push this into the kids' lives. Don't. Again, this should not be in school, I don't think. Stay educational. Showing them pornographic pictures is not educating them.
Well, I also think we talk about sports, right? I think there's a big issue there. I don't think that individuals that were born as a boy with the testosterone levels, which are much higher than females that are born female, I don't think they should be able to compete in sports with
women,
with girls. Yeah, it's not right.
Well,
and
Josh,
who was I telling you earlier? The tennis player,
Maria Navratilova. My daughter Tessa, who's a tennis pro, is going to be upset with me.
Now she of course, I think she identifies as a lesbian lady, and that's okay. But she is really against transgenders competing in sports.
Well, a lot of women have spoken up
women.
That transgender movement is anti-women's rights because it's basically saying, You as a woman, are second rate to somebody who has chosen to identify as a woman, and therefore they can come out like this the swimmer that just got beat by a transgender swimmer.
Yeah.
There's a skateboarder, a 29-year-old skateboarder who's mopping up the competition against 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds in skateboarding, who has male chromosomes, and they are. Look, I'm not foolish enough to say that I can beat a woman UFC fighter, right? But because they have the training, they have the ability. But if you take a man, and it's funny, there are certain sports where the transgender thing doesn't work. They're not allowing people who are born as women to fight against men.
No,
or
it's already
not
happening. I think it's happening. Hasn't it
hold
happened
on.
a time or two?
On the other end, it probably has, but it's not. You don't see people who are born a woman fighting men in the ring.
Well, you know what's funny? I heard.
Do you? Have you seen that?
I think there's been a case or two that it's.
There's a lawsuit, right?
What about
There's
a lot of
What about
speculation.
the NBA? What about the NBA?
Yeah.
Can LeBron James say, I identify as a woman and go play in the NBA, right? Or the WNBA right now?
In a sport that I used to do, powerlifting, we had a guy that was just broke a lot of powerlifting records because he was a man and he entered as a female. And then he was going to do it again, and they stopped him from doing it because he's much stronger. And it's
They stopped him?
ridiculous. Yeah, they stopped him.
Oh,
and
really?
because they knew he was doing it for show. I heard a statistic the other day
How do you prove that?
in the boxing world, the top 1 to 400 men can beat the number one women fighter in the world. And then in tennis, it's 1 to 1,500 can beat the top women player in the world. The men players can.
Right.
So when men go through puberty, we are bigger, we are stronger. It's just a natural thing
Right.
that it is. And to deny women of being able to achieve something against biological women, that's a travesty.
Yeah, it's not
You know,
right.
your heart just goes out to them because they've tried just as hard.
Yeah.
I was listening to Riley Gaines the other day, and she was a swimmer that got beat by the male Thomas swimmer. She said it wasn't me that was really denied, but there was some people, and I guess it's the top 15. You become All-Americans. She pushed down number 15 to 16, who now is denied becoming an All-American. She said, I feel bad for that person, not me going from 5th to 6th.
Right.
You know, and as you look at those things, your heart, because everybody, we've got daughters. Josh, you and I are daughter dads. Pastor Ron had, Tara. You want them to have a chance in the world to succeed and to achieve things against other biological women.
Right. And it's interesting because people I know would say you're being hateful to those athletes, but I blame society. I blame the culture that has told these athletes that it's okay, because they are the ones that are setting them up for failure. They're the ones that are setting them up for all of this basic, all of these issues from the other side of the line.
Well, I love it that Maria Doctorolova comes out against it, but somebody that I watched in 1976 win the triathlete, Bruce Jenner.
Yes.
I mean, I think at one point he was the Woman of the Year, I think on Time Magazine. I think he won that. But he will come out as Caitlyn Jenner and say that women should not have to compete with biological men that identify as women. And I think he is an expert on this.
Right.
Because he probably knows he's still better at 72. I think he's 70 or 72.
He looks doggone good too.
Yeah. But I'm just saying he's been a man and won a gold medal at the Olympics. Or still's a man. I shouldn't say it. He's still a man.
You know what? Yeah. Well, you know what? Again, you can be 75 years old and have plastic surgery and look like you're 35-year-old, but you're still 75. And I think we have a problem with that. Again, as adults, if you want to do this is fine. And if you want to think that, the hormones and the drugs you're taking is changing the very fiber of who you are, that's fine. We could argue this thing all day long. I want to agree to disagree. We have our opinion, you have yours. The main thing is, because we disagree with you doesn't mean we hate you. We love you. We just can't change the way we believe, because our value system is based on the Bible. And we're very emphatic that we stay with that. I have more things to say, but, people will bring up the issue of intersex, of this. I think 1% or less of people that are born without the proper sexual organs. They don't develop, the genitals.
I would wonder if it's probably less than that.
I don't know. That was a very liberal number. And we sympathize with that. I mean, we want to work through that. And so it's just an area that we're not going to agree in. But why do we have to call each other phobic, call each other names, and say you're hating me because you don't agree with me? Again, I want to state this again. If you want respect, then you got to give us respect. It's got to be a two-way street. If you want us to say, I understand why you believe that way and I accept you, you got to understand why we believe our way and accept us.
Well, Pastor, we have some friends that are attorneys, and they say in a compromise, no one's happy. So if you're going to compromise and say, hey, you live your life, then they've got to compromise. Then you guys can, you guys can have the opinion that you have.
Yes.
And
and it's created a lot of other problems. Oregon now has passed a law that they're putting tampons and they're putting menstrual products in all the boys' bathrooms. And the boys, they don't know what to do. They said they're taking them and gluing them to the walls. They're sticking them in their ears and putting them in their mouths. And they're
silly.
And so it's causing confusion in a lot more areas than we have time to discuss today.
The reason is because they're allowing biological females to go into the boys' restrooms, right? And so that's why they have them in there. And so, it's a lot of schools are starting to have 3 different restrooms: a boys, a girls, and then a neutral. I mean, that seems to work.
But this is costing so much money to put these products in all the bathrooms that it's going to cost, I think they said 30 teachers their jobs. And I think we've got to use a little more common sense here.
Well, common sense would dictate, if you're going to have a bathroom, make it, okay, let's go ahead and let's just make it a bathroom.
Yeah.
But you can't occupy it 2 at a time. Because I think that's where the trouble comes, because we've seen it. And I've sent you that article today about what happened in Virginia, Loudoun County last year, where somebody that wore a skirt into a girl's bathroom raped a girl. And the father stood up at the board meeting, and they said, you're a hater. And they found out later that it was true. And the same kid got transferred to another school and did the same thing. So you look at those things, and that's what scares you as a parent, right? You want to know that your kids are protected; they can go to school. So let's just make the one stall bathroom where you can't. There you go. But there again, I want to go jump back to Leah Thomas thing. But she says, when we're dressing in a women's restroom or locker room, and there's a biological man that identifies a woman, when they undress, that's intimidating to us as women.
Yes.
And they say, what are our feelings at that moment, where we're all kind of embarrassed and we're all kind of feeling like maybe a little insecure about ourselves. And they said, but that's a fact too, because they're taking the one person's rights over, others.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, again, we're talking about adults doing what they feel they should do. And the reason that I came up with this topic was for several reasons, really, not just one reason. But I really have not been so angry about it until I see it starting to really affect our children. And I see an agenda that's starting to move very rapidly and grow very rapidly. And I am really against this agenda. And we have to make people knowledgeable of what's going on. And we have to vote. We have to join the PTA at school. We have to make sure we know who our principals are and the people running our schools. We need to know what's in the library, all of this stuff.
Pastor, you know this way better than I do. But when Jesus was there and they were talking about God's kingdom and they were talking about things, Jesus brought a little child over and says, well, it's going to be better if somebody causes this little child to stumble. He might as well just throw a millstone around his neck and throw himself in the sea. I think Jesus was saying these kids are so impressionable that if you do something that's going to cause them to stumble, that's on you.
Yes.
And it'll affect the kids, but he goes, that's on you. And I think responsibility has to go back to the adults.
I think we're putting thoughts into kids' minds that they never would have thought of by themselves. Yeah. And we're interjecting these thoughts. And then once they say something that looks like it's agreeing with a thought we put in their mind, then we full throttle ahead. And what happens when you you have you transition, or let's say you become a transgender, and you even go as far as not only the blockers, but the drugs, and then you actually have surgery, and then you get to be 30 years old or 25 and go, man, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. And it is happening. It is happening. And I think it could be on the increase even.
It's on an alarming rate. The things that I see coming out, it's more than just a few.
And then I have to scratch my head. Adults that are condoning these things in 7 and 8 year old children? I mean, come on. A lot of them are just going through a phase. And I think even the Psychiatric Association and Psychology National, organizations, have handbooks that have statistics in them that many of these kids will get through this period if we'll just give them time. Don't put the puberty blockers on them, and don't doing all this stuff right away. I mean, give it a lot of time to work its way out.
Well, I think children, you look at children's behavior. We give them time to work it out. We all go into a preschool and the kids are like mine. We didn't have to teach them that to be selfish, right? But they will work that out. And I'm not comparing the two as the same, but I mean, that's what kids do,
Tom,
right?
did we ever hear of this 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? We never heard of it. As far as we know, it didn't exist. Now, someone's going to try to prove us wrong there and say, it did exist. But we never heard about it. I mean, it wasn't something that you
And I will say
about.
this, that you can't see it duplicated in a lot of other countries that aren't developed.
Yes.
You're not seeing this conversation out there. Not saying it doesn't exist,
Right.
but people are just dealing with other things that are keeping them more engaged in their life.
Well,
like
Matt Walsh did that movie, What Is a Woman? And he went to Africa.
He
and
did.
talked to the tribal leaders. And they're like, what? They're confused when he asked them what is a woman. But you're right. They're focused on getting food. They're
Yes.
focused on surviving
every day.
Focused on working together as a tribe. I think that's one of the biggest issues in our country today is we have a real enemy. We believe in we believe in God. We also believe in the devil. We believe in there's two sides, and that enemy is behind division and behind the frustration, and it's happening in the families. And he's attacking the core of the family, and that's the saddest part of this whole thing is the schools are doing they're doing their thing, and there's a lot of issues there. And I would encourage young people who have a strong opinion on this to get involved in leadership in schools, become superintendents eventually, like your wife has,
board members,
become teachers, become educators, because it's important.
Well, just think about this too. Our granddaughter, the other day, my wife picked her up some time ago, and she says, Nana, am I a boy or a girl? And your mother said, you're a girl. Well, I don't know. I might be a boy. No, you're a girl. Okay. What are we having for lunch? What if my wife would answer it? I don't know. It's a good question. We need to explore that.
Because
there would have been a whole different results.
Don't they look to us adults?
Yes, they do.
To reaffirm them.
That same daughter is a cat for about an hour every night. So she walks around and meows. I can't get a.
It's her personality right now.
She's playing. She's having fun, and she's enjoying her life as a kid. Why can't we let kids be kids? That's the big thing, is let them grow up.
What would we do? Now this might get me in trouble, but what if 12 or 13-year-old went into the doctor and said, I identify as an amputee and I'm suicidal because I'm trapped in this body, and could you cut a leg off or whatever? I mean, that is a horrible thought. But what would we do? We'd put them on drugs. We'd really work with them. And so, again, I'll say it. Adults, do what you want to do. We will love you through it, whatever. Just leave our children alone. Leave the children alone. Don't push these books that we talked about in the library. Don't put these thoughts in their mind that would not have been there. Well, again, these kids' minds are still developing.
One of the biggest arguments is for transgender, the movement, is it's coming from young people who were bullied in school because they were different. And I abhor bullying. I think it's terrible.
I do too.
And I think that schools should come down on that. They should, make sure that they're punishing those kids that are bullying the other kids.
Should have never been allowed. But remember when we were freshmen going to high school?
Yes.
I remember how traumatized I was told that you got to watch out because they're going to pant you and put you outside the gym naked. Did you ever hear?
Yeah, yes.
I mean,
It happened. It happened.
I was terrified.
I know a student it happened to.
I do too, but I was terrified. That's all I was looking for was that.
Yes.
And it never
The
happened.
poor freshman got
But I was
year.
just like, I was like in my heart. And it was the older guys that were that. But I mean, that is what you're talking about. That's the form of even a group of people saying, oh, it happened to us, so we're going to make it happen to you.
But at the same time, like I was bullied, okay, legitimately bullied. I grew up and I learned how to cope. I learned how to deal with it, and I learned how to find my own confidence. And I learned how to stop bullying, as it pertained to me.
I was raised with a bunch of little rednecks, and they were all my buddies, so no one could bully me if they wanted to, because all my little redneck buddies, they were tough as anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we'll start putting into this today, or bring it to an end, bring it to a conclusion. But we just want to stand up and say these are our opinions, and they're based on our Christian values. Again, we just want our children to be in a safe environment.
Yes, we do.
We don't want thoughts put into their minds. We don't want books that are should be age appropriate. We don't want them seeing those books. We don't want any grooming going on. And again, to some of you people that say because we disagree with you, we hate you. No, we don't like some of your agendas. We don't hate you personally.
And can I say this? If you are on that side of the aisle and you want to fight hard against an ideology that you hate, the worst thing you can do is to shove your beliefs, just like the worst thing we can do is to shove our beliefs, because all that does is cause more of a divide. All that's doing is all my friends are putting their kids in Christian school, and they're gonna be more divided with your kids than ever. And so I wish that public schools were a safe place. That's what my hope and wish is, that it can be a safe place where you keep ideologies, you keep all these things out of it, including religion. I mean, keep it out.
We're fine with that. We're fine with keeping religion
out. Keep it out and let the parents teach their kids. That's fine with me. But don't push your ideologies, which to me are the same as a religious ideology. Don't push that on my kids,
I always go back to Ephesians. Our battle's not against flesh and blood.
No,
but it's against the spirits and principalities. And sometimes those spirits and principalities are agendas. They're things that are, it's a movement. It's a spirit of a movement.
But we've been given a promise, Tom, that if we train up our children in the way they ought to go, they will not depart from it. But now there's a new movement coming in trying to really pervert that agenda. And we can't let it happen because we're training our children right. And we're not sending them to school to hear about, transgenderism. We're sending them to school to learn about math, English, history, and so forth and
the
so
basics,
on.
And hopefully they'll be good at it.
Let us train our own kids at home, and we're not also willing, if it ever transcends to a place that is different than it is now, we're not in agreement with having some counselor suggest our kids go into a group home because the child and the parents don't agree on things that are outside of the realm of child abuse or things that are really, really known to be devastating. We're not going that direction, and we don't want to see those laws passed. So other than that, I think we said what we have to say, and we'll sign off. You got any last thing you want to say before we go?
No, it's just
we
that
love all of you.
Love all you. And, there again, like Pastor said, these are our opinions.
Yes. Love you, and see you next week. God bless.
Your daddy's rain.